morning. It's Thursday, and I'm going to bring the guys in. Here's George and Sean. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Toyo. Oh,
You Chinese today?
oh yeah, very good. Oh, yeah.
Georgie's son.
Yeah.
Georgie's
Hey, when I was in
That's
Jamaica, the guy was doing the
Japanese,
sushi.
right? Georgie's son.
Yeah, no. When I was in Jamaica, I was waiting for the Japanese guy to come in and do the sushi, and the black guy's there. And I said, "Yo, what's the story here?" He goes, "Oh, I'm Jamaicanese," so that was good.
Well, Jamaican would be Georgie Mon.
Yeah, Georgie.
No problem, Georgie Mon.
Yeah, no.
Well, we got a really good guest today. We got Michael Schwartz, Dr. Michael Schwartz, and he's going to talk about. Huh?
Somebody told me about him. I forget who.
I don't know. I heard he likes baseball. I heard he really likes baseball.
Yeah, he's a baseball guy.
I'm going to have to give him crap about the Tigers and the Yankees, though, because the Tigers are doing really good this year. So I hope they end up going to the World Series.
Yeah, well, did they sweep the Yankees?
No, they almost.
2 out of 3. What's that song? 2 out of 3 ain't bad or something?
Right? Yeah. I was going to bring a broom, so I could go.
Maybe I can play that for Mike. The 2 out of 3 ain't bad when he comes on.
Yeah, then he'll never come back if we do that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open up with a prayer because it's Holy Week, and this is a good one. It's do not love the world nor the things in the world, which is John 2:15. And it means no matter how smart or stealthy a thief is, he will eventually slip up and be captured and punished. Even if you trust with one eye open, continue to trust. Don't allow the bad apples of the world to steal your peace and joy. Instead, place your confidence in Christ alone. Live in faith, not fear. And that's out of a book I got from Palin, and it's got some really good stuff in there. But that kind of is like for everybody that's anxious and can't wait for things to happen. Don't let them steal your joy. Don't get upset.
Today is Holy Thursday. Today is Holy Thursday, so.
Okay, yeah, and then tomorrow's Good Friday.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yep.
I know I got screwed up from being on yesterday, so I kept thinking today was Friday.
Yeah, you got a triple this week. 3.
Yeah.
I know. It screwed me up, but that's okay. It was fun yesterday. So
you did good yesterday.
Oh, well, thanks.
Very good.
Yeah, it was different, working with Chris like that for a little bit, but it was all right. So
when I turned it on, when I got on, you had to have the 2 commercials, usually the 2 quick commercials you could skip. Well, when I went on, there was a real long one yesterday. You couldn't skip it. So I couldn't see the show forever. And I'm like, where's Trix at? Why isn't she in the chat? And all of a sudden, boom, there you popped up on my screen.
Yeah, Chris called me. It was later. It was Tuesday night when Tony was going to be late to fill in. So, all right. Well, we're going to bring Dr. Schwartz on so we're not wasting his time because I'm sure he's sitting there just anxious to start.
Yeah, okay. He's got stuff to do.
Yeah.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, you guys are good today. I got up way early today. I had to do Chris DeGaulle at Salem, Philly this morning. And, Chris is great. I've been on his show a number of times. I've had him on my show. He's got a pretty big audience. He's Salem radio. So I had to get up super early because I had to do that show. And then I had to prep my whole show so that I could uninterruptedly spend as much time as you want today. No That's worries great. In the world.
Well, we appreciate you.
Oh, my God.
And for those of, I don't know. I never see. I would love to see everybody. I could see the chat up here. So I see the names. Come on over and check out 2 Mics Live. That's our channel on Rumble. The number 2 Mics Live. And I'll do my show at 10 a.m. And then I'm on Newsmax today at 12:30. I'm on a panel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Long day of this.
You're probably sore sitting down all day.
Yeah, I'm sitting in this chair. You have no idea. My butt hurts so bad when I get up. My legs. This studio chair kills me.
You one of those stand-up desks.
Right? No, I should get one. I'm in my studio's nice. I have a gym that I can see over here, and I look at it. I don't use it.
You mentally work out. You can see yourself doing the reps, right?
Yeah. That's why people join Planet Fitness because they tell everybody to remember.
Yeah. My one buddy joined. He was a big guy, and he goes, he actually was getting a job at Planet Fitness. I go, as the planet or the fitness? Never worked out. He just worked there. Anyway.
Well, I wanted to show your book. Now we're going to talk about vaccines and MRNA. correct. And I'm going to put this up. This is the book that has all that good information in there, correct?
Yeah, well,
And-
yeah.
That's the second book.
Yeah, that's I got him here if you want to see him.
Well, I've got this one too.
got 'em all.
Okay, yeah, I've got Fauci's fiction.
Yeah, that was book number 1.
Yeah. And then this is the newest one, though. That one is the newest one. And that's the one that I was really impressed with that one. I really liked it.
Well,
It was
thank
really
you.
good.
I appreciate you picking it up and taking the time to read it. Most people buy books for the cover and they sit somewhere on the shelves. I'm glad you read
Yeah.
it.
I got a bunch of them up there.
Look at you, Sean.
You
Did
know?
you read all those?
Some of them I did. Some of them I started and stopped. And I'm even embarrassed to say I got a book from Biden up there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Prior
Is
to him running for president.
is it empty?
Yeah. It's a lot of ice cream.
Okay.
I don't know if we can be friends anymore, Sean, if you got a
What
Biden
happened
book.
was my parents lived in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. He was at the bookstore there doing a thing. Him and this was before he I think it was before he was even vice president. And my dad's like, let's just go down there. All right. So he was there. I bought a book. He signed it. And I read like maybe the first chapter and that was it.
All right.
It really
That's
wasn't
what most people do that.
My
You know-
wife wanted to throw it out, and I said, "I'll just keep it. What the hell? What's it going to
No,
hurt?"
why not? It's
It'll be a collector's item when he dies, whenever he does. But
Yeah, I'll put ice cream around
that's how I feel about my books.
it.
When I die, they'll be collector's items. Well, yeah, I mean, I know you want to talk about vaccines today. That's fine. That's funny that you say that because this morning on Chris DeGaulle, I never know what I'm going on to talk about. And the producer yesterday said he wants to talk about what RFK is doing. So today, we actually were talking about RFK's announcement with vaccines, with autism, and it's kind of stark. So it's actually a good topic. And then Glenn Curry just invited me on his show tomorrow to talk about the same thing on WAT in Watertown, New York. So it depends on what's in the news, but you're actually timely today with the announcement yesterday, and we can get into all that. I always tell people, and I think we're trying to sell books, but I wrote them for a reason, and it took a long vaccine fiction and Fauci's fiction kind of go hand in hand. You got to really understand Fauci's fiction first before you get into vaccine fiction, which is the follow-up, because there's so much stuff. Even this morning on Chris DeGaulle, we were talking about the autism rates, and we were talking about vaccines. And again, I said we're talking about this in a vacuum. We're not talking about different technologies. He was talking about specific, just vaccines as a whole, and that's part of the issue. Is people don't understand. It's like saying vegetable, right? And saying, okay, or fruit, and to say, well, I have an orange. Okay, well, an orange is an orange. It's not a plum. A plum is different than an orange. I'm trying to dumb it down for people that don't understand this because vaccines are not all lumped into one category. They changed the definition of the word vaccine during COVID, and it was a slight modification to the wording. Instead of saying it prevents, it to say it helps prevent. And now people don't understand that that's pretty stark because when you understand something in the mind of a 70, 80, 90-year-old, I say this all the time, they think vaccine gives you lifetime immunity, inoculation, or long-term immunity like polio, right? Or like Hep B gives you about 10 years before you got your titers go down and you might need it again. But with a flu shot or a COVID shot, which is, the COVID shot was primarily mRNA. They have others, viral vector. They have, there's another one out from Novavax, which is live attenuated. But these shots give you the essential of a flu shot, 120-day antibody response. They don't give you what you think of it traditionally in the word vaccine. So when someone says the word vaccine, it drives somebody like me batty because we're lumping all that in together. So, you get all these keyboard warriors on Facebook that want to argue, Mike wants to bring back polio. Well, polio is a different type of shot. It's an live attenuated shot. That technology that we've been using for years works pretty well. However, there's problems with it, but not to the extent of what we saw with mRNA. And that's the difference. People they're not being specific when they talk about vaccines. And that's kind of what we got into this morning on Stegall, because with the autism thing, people just want to say, does it go back to vaccines? Well, there's a million directions we can go. Is it the frequency we're giving these kids? We give 12 shots before a kid could even speak. How do we know if they're having a reaction? We learned during COVID that symptomology isn't just observable. Sometimes it's only reportable. What I mean by that is if George comes into my office and he's got a cough and a fever, I can observe that. But if he doesn't have classic symptoms, which most people don't get from COVID, for instance, I can't observe the fact that he has a headache. So how do you tell a kid, who can't speak yet? How do you know if they have a headache? Nonetheless, if they're crying, but you don't know why they're crying. Are they hungry? Are they sick? What's going on? So you really can't tell from a kid who has 12 shots if they're having a reaction to something or not. So is autism caused by that? We don't know. But I think if you talk to a lot of people, a lot of experts, they will tell you quietly. They will say, we think it's the vaccine. They won't say that loudly because it's almost like getting called an election denier. People get worried about saying it's the same thing. People are fearful that they don't want to speak out in public, so they don't want to come out and say, "Oh, it's the vaccines." But we think these shots might have correlation, or at least what's in some of these shots, or the technology that some of these shots are using, which is almost more important. So,
well, they came out with the study now that there was one before it was 1 in 36 kids were getting autism. Now it's 1 out of 31.
I'll do you one better, George. And I did some research because last night when they sent me over the topic, sorry, Trix, I didn't mean to cut you off there. When you look at the numbers and you go back, and I put it up here on my screen, I can actually get it up for you. But I think when you go back to the 1970s and 80s, it was 1 to 2 to 5,000. And then when you go back to like 1990, well, let's go back to 2000. In 2000, just 25 years ago, it was 1 in 150. And then that number in 2020 went to 1 in 36, and now, a couple of years later, it's 1 in 31. So just in the last 25 years, we've identified 1 in 150 to 1 in 31. Now, RFK, a lot of people are going to say, well, that's because we're diagnosing it more. We've expanded the spectrum, and RFK acknowledges that. And I'm not touting RFK, but I think he does a great job on this. But RFK says that only accounts for 25% of the increase in cases, where the numbers still stark. You always have the left pushing back saying, well, it's got to be something else. They don't want to admit that it could be something that, God forbid, a conservative person or somebody working for a conservative came up with. RFK, though, is the perfect person to do this. He's been studying this for years.
Yeah. Back in 1979 and 1980, when I was in nursing school, I did a whole study on vaccines, and I went back, and associated it with SIDS. And every single case that I looked at back then that was available was tied right to a recent vaccination. Every single one of them. I couldn't find any outliers at that point. And then the weird part was my neighbor had 2 children that were vaccine injured, neurologically really, really bad. And she actually took them through the vaccine court and won. And everything from that time on, anybody that I knew that had kids or even my own kids, I would do the vaccinations, but I wouldn't do them according to the schedule. Right. I would break them way out, and do it as far apart as you possibly could. So this way you could at least, tag it down to what one that they had. Was it the MMR? Was it the DTP? Whatever it was at that point. And at least you could pinpoint it. But my neighbor, I couldn't believe she won on that. And they ended up paying her for her kids for a long time. And I doubt they're even still alive now, because that was, back in the 1980s.
One of the things I wrote in the first book was that politics should never interact with medicine, but it does all the time. And, you got to think about some of the cognitive bias. You bring up a great point, Trix, because there's a lot of pediatricians who are smart enough to understand this and space them out. And when a parent asks them, they say, absolutely no problem. My wife's sister, her kid, they just got dismissed from their pediatrician because she did not want to do it on the timetable and schedule that the pediatrician recommended, and they dismissed her from the practice. So, I mean, you have a lot of doctors out there who just don't care. They go with the CDC guidelines. They don't go outside the box, but the CDC's been proven wrong more times than, we can. So, when you say that, it's kind of smart. If you think, why would you want to give your kid all of this stuff at once, especially stuff you don't need? And Kelly was talking on the show the other night about DTaP. She goes, I don't see a need for it. Why would I give it to a kid? MMR, I'm okay with if it's live attenuated, but I'm not okay with it if it's mRNA. Or I'm not necessarily okay with it if it's subunit or viral vector. That's the difference in explaining this stuff, as a whole, rather than just classifying the words vaccine, because that's most people's understanding is very basic. But when they get on Facebook, they become experts all of a sudden.
Lots of medical experts out there on Facebook.
Yeah,
they'll tell you. Just ask them. They'll tell you all about it.
You got it. I'm looking over here. Who's this? Oh, yeah. Mike lives in New Jersey. Who wants to know where I live? And I'm not a medical doctor. Everybody knows I run medical clinics. So I want to be clear here. I'm a research doctor, but that's kind of what we were missing during COVID. Like most people didn't take the medical staff and analyze the data. So my medical people were just most people are trained, Trixie, as you know, the CDC guidelines tell you what, you're supposed to know because that's, they don't know any better. And then it takes people like us to look at the data and say, this doesn't make sense. So, what we were saying in April and May of 2020, well, now they caught up, but it took them long enough. And of course, now, it's too late. You've got all these people with needless shots in their arm for something they didn't need in the first place. I wonder about the kids in kind of the same thing. But again, it coming down to that technology difference is a huge major factor. And that's what people need to understand. So when you look at the data, and like I said, RFK, he's got people like Aaron Sear. He's got a great team around him that have been doing this for years. They asked me again on Stegall, like, is he the right guy for this? There's no better person to direct this with the team he has. Like, this is the one thing that he's zoned in on. Why would you wouldn't bring in somebody to take years to learn and go through the data and the studies that RFK has done. They would take years to catch up to where he's at. So if he says he can come up with an answer by September, that's pretty bold, but that tells me that they're going down the right road already. They just need to put the final pieces of the puzzle. If you were starting from scratch, this would take years. But RFK has a litany of knowledge in this field, and I think we're going to hit the nail on the head. The problem is going to be, is the public going to respond to it? If we identify certain things that are in these shots that are causing certain things, or the frequency, is it going to be just like COVID, where you're going to have people in mass rushing out to get their kids 72 shots, and then you're going to have the other side who's intelligent enough to say, okay, let's look at the data and explore it? I mean, that's kind of what concerns me, is that we have literally suspended reality with this, the cycle that we're in with politics and the news media. And I wrote something in the new book, Trixie, you probably read it, about the abundance of news media people basically saying that they're left-leaning versus the amount of people who are right-leaning. And it's really stark. You don't want a media, purporting certain things that aren't true, but we see it every day. The mainstream has no idea what they're talking about.
No, they don't. They don't. Well, like you were saying with RFK too, I don't know how many people are aware of it, but he had the Children's Health Defense Fund. And that was something that he's been, so he's bringing attorneys, he's bringing researchers, he's bringing everything to the table. And like you said, he's the absolute perfect person for this job. I can't think of anybody else that would do it any better. And with all the experience he has and the expertise he has with his team, I believe they'll have it by September. I can't see where they wouldn't. It should be nailed down like that if he has that many people.
Yeah.
You want to know how many politicians took saline instead of the COVID shot?
Right. I said that, George, many times. I said that so much. I said it with Biden because I thought, why would you give the president of the United States an untested new technology for something that we all know you don't need? Why would you give it to him? But then I watched, George, I actually played on my show. I played clips of him getting the shot year after year. And I what I did with that information was I wanted to show my audience the cognitive destabilization, basically, year after year, of how he got worse and worse with every single shot. And then I said to myself, maybe he is getting this thing. Maybe it's speeding up the Alzheimer's and dementia. I have no idea.
Speed it up. Hey, we got some great people in a chat, just like you do on your show, Mike. And they, people always have some good questions. So Denise, whose granddaughter has some developmental spine problems, she asked, would a COVID shot during pregnancy cause spine deformities in an infant? Any idea on that?
Yeah, so I'm going to generalize it for you because this is the best way to put it. And this is kind of how the books do it too. What we found with the shots is it causes inflammation. So does COVID. The shots basically mimic COVID. COVID causes inflammation to shots. You're getting unneeded inflammation every time you get one of these shots. So what we see in practice is it speeds up areas of instability. And I always tell the same stories because maybe it will relate to what you're asking, Denise. But we see the woman who would have a joint issue at 40, and now it's exhibiting itself at 20. We see the man who would have a heart issue at 70, and now it's exhibiting itself at 40. We see things sped up. You talk about cancers, all these kids now that are developing these, what they call turbo cancers, but I don't like to use that word. A kid goes in the hospital now for something unrelated, some testing at 26 years old. They do some tests. They find out you've got stage 4 cancer. Relate that to a chapter in my book with Richard Hirschman, who's an embalmer, who's been doing this, I think I mentioned him last time, for 25 years. He could tell you the amount of time times he had a young person come on his table in the last 25 years? Well, now he can't count because it's so much, and he keeps that data. See, data tells the story. When you have data in your office, when you have 19,000 patients like I do, and you had 44,000 tests, you can look at the data, triangulate it, correlate it, and come up with a thematic analysis of it. So when you say, could it be? Yeah, I mean, the answer is always yes, because you can look at these outside factors that are causing the inflammation and causing areas of, again, weakness to basically, exacerbate. And then all of a sudden you're wondering, could it have been the shot? The answer is you don't need this thing. You don't want this thing. Stay away from it. You don't need anything in your body that's unnecessary, that's going to cause an instability or an area of inflammation that's going to make something worse or speed something up. Is a doctor ever going to pinpoint it and say, yeah, that's the cause? Probably not. But I'm telling you, we're seeing so many anomalies since we've been giving people these shots and giving them this amount of inflammation that it kind of blows your mind. You look at the charts that I have in Vaccine Fiction, and you could see data for anything from miscarriages to cardiomyopathy, and the data is flatlined for 30 years. And in 2021, it spikes up. So like miscarriages alone, for 30 years of data, it's like 25 or less related to a vaccine. And then all of a sudden in 2021, that number jumps to 3,500. And from 25 to 3,500, then down the next year in 2022 to 1,600, and then it kind of tails off. Well, what were we doing in 2021? And that chart is stark for every single thing we've looked at. And by the way, that's government data. That's VAERS numbers verified by the U.S. government. These aren't numbers we're pulling. I look at that along with my information, and you go, well, there's a picture here. So when you're asking about something, a weird anomaly that you might see, and it was directly related right after that time period, the answer is probably, but we're never going to be able to say definitely.
Well, you know what I was concerned about, like how that crosses the blood-brain barrier. And once that does that, you're going to end up with the neurological deficits and all that kind of stuff. I believe that the COVID shot, because of that crossing the blood-brain barrier and hitting the frontal lobe, maybe that's where the spike protein or whatever will build up. It causes so much aggression in people. And I personally think that's why you see a lot of it now in so many people, because it's all the younger people that are protesting and doing that kind of stuff. And they're so irrational and everything. And you wonder how much frontal lobe damage has been done, to those people that have gotten like 3, 4, 5 jabs.
Right.
Good point, Tracy.
Here's that chart, by the way, if you can see that. See those numbers spike up? That's what I was talking about. That's miscarriages, stillborn births by year from 1990 to 2024. I mean, that just tells you something right there. And when you look at the data and you understand it in totality, you go, okay, there's obviously something here. To sit there and go gaslight like a Democrat and say, oh, look over here, nothing to see here. I mean, you're just showing your stupidity. They might as well write their IQ on their mask, less than 84. I say that all the time. But Trixie, there's so much to this. We can get into it in a million different ways. What you call, I forget the word you used, aggravation, we call cytokine storm. But you're getting a needless cytokine storm. And I said this to my immunologist probably, I don't know, maybe right when the shots were coming out. We would talk every day, compare the data. I'm a practice sending in, multiple samples from my area. Then he's receiving samples from all over the country. So we're talking every day, correlating the data. We're trying to get an understand. We were learning this in real time at the time. And I said to him, I said, Doc, I said, if you never had COVID, and you go out and get a shot and it causes this inflammatory reaction, then you get another one, and then another one. And then all of a sudden you catch COVID, because we knew you could with these shots. They weren't designed to prevent it. I said, could you theoretically be sicker? And he stopped me and he said, yeah, from the cytokine storm. He goes, that's a great point. And then we started seeing that in abundance. But we were predicting what was going to happen based on what we already knew. The media and the CDC, for some reason, was like 12 months behind us all the time. And we would get so frustrated when they would come out with breaking news and they would tell you what was going on. And we were like, we've been telling our patients that for a year or 18 months. Like it was just crazy that they didn't want to talk to people like us on the ground who had real data in real time. It was as if they were making it up, or they had a narrative that they wanted. And we would sit back and wonder, why are they telling people this? It's not.
How much stuff did you come out with truth in your book, and the government attacks you with the suits that they're putting against you? Number one, and I think a very good movie to watch, which would pertain a lot to your book, is called Die Suddenly, which wake up a lot of people about how bad the vaccines were.
Well, if you read this, and if you saw the movie Died Suddenly, Richard Hirschman is the embalmer that movie.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
And he's in a chapter in this book. Richard was nice enough to let me interview him, and he's become a friend of mine. But that's chapter 7, and it's called Sudden Deaths. That chapter is all about it. So what I did in Fauci's fiction was I took what we were seeing and we told the public. And then in vaccine fiction, the follow-up, it's like, okay, where did we leave off? Except I want to bring in other experts. So I brought in Richard Hirschman. I brought in Dr. Jancy Lindsay. I brought in a woman we call Molly in the book to protect her identity because she got fired. She's a PA who got fired for reporting cases into VAERS because I want people to understand how VAERS works. And the biggest thing about VAERS in that chart that I just showed you is that, and Harvard agrees with me, only 1% of the cases that you see here make it into VAERS. So multiply that number by 100. Wow. When you look at the deaths at the time of the writing in this book, it was between 40 and 50,000. So what's that times 100? It's between 4 and 5 million deaths just related to these shots. Needless deaths for something we gave, again, at lowest common denominator. You didn't need this shot and it doesn't work. Why would I, in good conscience, give you something, an experimental technology that I know doesn't work and I know you don't need? So we never recommended the shot for those reasons alone. And now you see, again, you dumb it down. People don't want to do that. There's still people rushing out for boosters. There's still people in the airport wearing masks. I saw a guy in a car yesterday with a mask on. I wanted to run him over. I wanted to ram the guy because
mask holes.
Well, but you realize they're literally dumbing down everybody around them. Mm-hmm. And when they hear something like me speak, I had a woman who left a review on my book yesterday, George, on vaccine fiction. Not a verified purchase, did not read it. This is somebody who got triggered at the cover, left a 1-star review and said, this is junk. Well, that affects people. You know, number one, she didn't read the book. This is my hard work. We didn't write this book. You don't make money on books. I tell you, we've lost money on our books. You don't make money doing books. My publicist yells at me and goes, stop writing books. But I did this for a reason. If everybody in the country read both of these books tomorrow, you wouldn't see a mask being worn. We don't not wear surgical masks for viruses. We just don't. Unless it's a properly fitted N95 mask, you're an idiot. And by the time you go to scratch your nose and break the seal, you have rendered it useless when you're inside. So you see people doing really dumb things for something they didn't need in the first place. And this is what we were screaming at the top of our lungs in April and May of 2020, saying, take the death count off the TV. You're scaring grandma. Open up the schools. You're going to ruin kids' lives. You are ruining the businesses down the street. You were causing the suicide rates to go up, and nobody wants to talk about it. And I said this on the show last time, and you know I'm a huge fan of Trump. My show is so pro-Trump, it's not even funny, but the Trump administration doesn't want to talk about this much because they created Operation Warp Speed. So you're in kind of a bind here because nobody really wants to get to the bottom of what happened in those 5 years. And what's so stark about that, Trixie, George, Sean, is that most people don't even want to talk about this anymore because they have vaccine. They have this PTSD from the COVID era or the fact that they had gotten these shots, and it's this cognitive distortion. They don't want to believe that they could have been led down a road. We got to stop sometimes. Pride will get the best of us. Yes. And if we don't learn about what we did, I just saw, Sean, yesterday a report, or 2 days ago, I read it on my show, that the FDA approved a fast track vaccine for H5N1, the bird flu. And on my head, I'm going, wait a second, this sounds like exactly what we did during COVID.
Repeating the steps again.
What are we doing? We haven't learned a thing. And that's on everybody else in the world who went through this with all of us. They should take the steps to learn about what happened here. Because look, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And it's going to happen again at some point.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how they're labeling long COVID? And I think it's really vaccine-acquired autoimmune deficiency disease after that. And that has a lot. There should be really telling people the truth. And I know that COVID was spliced with the HIV, to make it more lethal. So how can people know if this is ever going to peak, or is this going to just keep going on and on and on?
In terms of what, Trixie?
In terms of everybody that has gotten the jab, if you haven't come down with any kind of an autoimmune disease like within the last 2 years or something, and you project that out 3-4 years from now, how is it ever going to peak where people are not going to get it anymore, or is the long COVID going to be a long haul, like where you're going to have that for the rest of your life?
I mean, the simple answer is the further you stay away from the shots, the better. Again, it's something you don't need for some that doesn't work. As far as COVID is concerned, you're going to get it again. Most people get it and never know they have it. We learned that in mass testing that 85% of people never develop a classic symptom. They don't. And the ones that did had a co-infection. You have to learn how to test properly. So it all goes back to knowledge, right? Stop going to doctors who are doing rapid tests on you. That's inappropriate. You should fire those doctors immediately. Most of these doctors who are doing this now shut their doors during COVID. They didn't learn anything then, and they haven't learned anything now because they reverted back to the same way they're practicing. Find somebody who understands medicine before you give them your health, because that's important. Stop going to urgent cares who don't have a record of you. Establish a relationship with a primary care doctor. And the question, Trixie, is this going to continue on? The further we stay away from these things, the better. COVID is not going anywhere, but neither is HKU, neither is NL63 or OL43. I mentioned these on the show last time, and I said, have you ever heard of these things? And the answer is usually a no. But these are coronaviruses, just like SARS-CoV-2 that we've been testing for years that no one's heard of because they weren't exploited during a political season. But there are 31 things on a respiratory pathogen panel, 31. So when you go to a doctor and they're checking rapid flu, rapid COVID, rapid strep, they're negating what are they guessing at the other 28? You need to diagnose properly. That's the first step is understanding what you have. That is the first step in understanding medicine as a whole, is diagnosing something properly. When you want to look at these autoimmune diseases that are popping up, hey, look, most people, and I'm going to say this, I'll go out on a limb here, most people who got the shot will probably be fine in totality, except that my hypothesis was we probably shorten the lifespan of the populace by 3 to 5 years on average. And that's a conservative estimate. It's probably more like 7 to 9. The damage you're doing to your body with two things. There's two conversations, one with the shot and one with COVID, which we should have never been exposed to in the first place, is I mean, that should blow everybody's mind. That should be making everybody scream from the top of their lungs. But again, we're not talking about it because we have all these factors and forces keeping us from doing that, whether it's PTSD or the fact that you have political organizations who just do not want to acknowledge the fact that autoimmune disease is abundant. My wife's aunt just came down with an autoimmune disease, and that her doctors, not me, her doctors said to her that they think it's from the shots. Now, my first question to Kelly was, were these the same idiots that recommended the shots in the first place? And she said, no. And I said, well, that's why, because a lot of these people have cognitive distortion. They're never going to want to admit that.
They're not going to admit that. Yeah. Human nature. Yep. It's human nature. Even the ones that took the shot aren't going to admit that they were wrong. Because they
fired my doctor over trying to push the shot on.
They forced my grandson to get the measles shot because he wasn't allowed to go to school because New York State says he can't go to school unless he gets the shot.
I guess we got to start homeschooling our kids at this point because the government, which we know sucks. I mean, and look, it's getting better, but it's going to take I don't know if it's going to all happen during Trump's term. And that's the problem because, there's so much convolution here, and we look at it and we can say, I don't know if we could possibly fix this in 4 years. I'm worried about the midterms. I'm worried about the next cycle. I'm worried about, like, 20 years to fix 50 years of crap that we've dealt with.
Yeah. People out there have
He's got 2 years, not 4.
Yeah, 2 years.
He may have an additional 2, but he's got 2 right now.
Well, yeah, until the midterms, right?
Yeah.
And it's important. It was a thing last night, but it's important how important that people are not educated enough to understand the entrapment that the government is. We'll go back with democracy. Democracy is when the government tells the people what to do. Ask the American Indian how much they trusted the government during the time.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, just think blankets caused the problem.
Yeah, well, the thing. I mean, my son got the shot because of the job. He got the myocarditis and he had that thing with the seizures that he got every once in a while. So, I mean, there is effects to it. And it's just that the problem is that because of the fake news media, which constantly on the same narrative of all the other ones, and some of them, Fox and Newsmax, are afraid to mention about the COVID vaccine and everything else because they're worried about being sued. Yeah. And again, you go around in circles with the sue because of who are their holding companies that hold their stock.
Yeah, and not only that, George, but think about their biggest advertisers, their pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, yeah, on the news, it's like you take a pill to get excited, to get And then you got to take depression medication because the medicine that you took to get excited didn't work. Then you got to go see a psychiatrist. So they're all tied in and everything else. I mean, by time and then at the end of the whole commercials, that 5 of them that you see in a minute is you're going to die by the time the end of it if you take them all.
Right. Yeah.
My friend O Jersey's in the chat, and he's a good New Jersey guy, Mike. And he put a mention there. His daughter was diagnosed with T1 diabetes, 4/1 last year. So I guess it was obviously April 1st. It wasn't an April Fool joke, but been told since T1 diagnosis spiking since COVID.
Everything's spiking since COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, inflammation is like what you said. Inflammation is like the root of almost all disease.
Yeah,
and as soon as you get that off that you're right down the path of you're open to anything. Myasthenia gravis, type 1, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, so many neurological things in autoimmune. And that's what's really scary is the neurological, because that's going to fry you for the rest of your life.
We can go down.
I think his thing was, we're not sure if it's the vax or COVID.
Right.
Probably more to the vax, right, than COVID.
And you never know. And that's the problem. I mean, both of them were needless. Again, there's two conversations. If I were to do a TED Talk, it's like, which direction do you want to go? Because we could spend 2 hours on each thing. And it's so stark. But I always go back to the basics again, because people, if they understood just the basics of viruses, of bacterial infections, of testing the appropriate way, like you really need you don't need a college degree to do this. You don't need a PhD to understand it. So I dumb it down in the books. But there are people that have told me I've had to read it twice because there is some science in there. Understanding just the basics of this will then kind of help you figure out what's going on now. So when you're starting to see things, you go, okay, well, maybe that's correlatable. And how can I, what can I do to prevent it? Look, we use 3 things, well, 4 things technically, when we zinc and electrolytes. That's it. That's the only treatment we used. It's kind of amazing. But if somebody had a co-infection, we would use an antibiotic, but you had to have a bacterial co-infection. You don't know that. We were giving out, there were so many people in the medical community who were giving out Z-Packs like crazy, right? Yeah. Just because, as a precaution. Well, that was causing antibiotic resistance. And now we're seeing huge antibiotic resistance for azithromycin. So, I mean, there are dumb things that we've done. I mean, we can go down the list of the dumb things that we did, but I mean, it never stops. It just never ends. You had government influence, you had pharmaceutical influence. You see things now in abundance, like your friend is saying, but no one wants to talk about. You have doctors that you're going to for answers on this, but they don't want to admit that maybe there's a correlation because they were the ones that were going along with this narrative in the first place. There's so much crap that you have from COVID that's going to affect us moving forward for generations to come that we really need to get a handle on. So, I mean, could it be? It could be from either or. It could be neither of the two. Type 1 is, that's inherited. Well, type 2 is what you develop, when your blood work is all out of whack. Now we're using stuff like GLP-1s, which a lot of people do. Oh, it's horrible. If I got a guy who's 350 pounds and I get him down 100 pounds, I'm adding 20 years to his life. They're saying, oh, there's no long-term studies on GLP-1s. You kidding me? Diabetics have been on it for years. It seems to work wonders for people. And it doesn't work, it works for everybody, but it doesn't work wonders for everybody. You've got to put in the time. You've got to eat healthy. You've got to take your vitamins to try to boost your immunity from certain things. There's so much to it. But like I said, I mean, Sean, we could go for hours in any which direction you want to go. The problem is it's like, at some point people just shut off. When you're explaining you're losing, that's the old adage in politics. And that's a shame because people just kind of want a very simple Google-fied, instant gratification answer. And there's no instant gratification answer here. There's a lot to it when it comes to COVID.
Yeah, everyone wants a yes or a no.
Yeah. Well, can you address the vaccine shedding a little bit for us?
Yeah. So when I first heard about it, I was like, okay, because, I'm a skeptic at heart. I'm a very positive person. But when I hear things, I want to know the mechanism of action. I want to know why. Dr. Jancy Lindsay, who is a microbiologist and a toxicologist, explains that in my book. And she says it's very real. And look, she's way above my pay grade when it comes to microbiology. So I will take her word for it. She says it's very real. It does happen. It's not going to be as bad if somebody were to get a shot and get the inflammatory reaction immediately from that shot. But she says shedding is very real. Does that mean everybody in the world has these, mechanisms that are recreating these spike proteins? Probably not. But Jancy says if you're around multiple people and you live with them, we kind of found that during COVID, right? What we found in COVID, just testing alone, was that 100% of the time, if somebody was symptomatic in the house, every single person had it. But 90% of the time, those people didn't have classic symptoms, so they wouldn't believe they had it, but they did have it. And then we found that most people were asymptomatic. So the level of viral load has to do with symptomology. That probably has to correlate into the shedding aspect as well, because if you didn't get the shot, the level of what you have is not going to be as high as somebody who actually got the shot. But from what I'm told by the experts who, again, have pay grades higher than mine, the shedding is very real.
Yeah, well, I know if you have a suppressed immune system, you're probably going to react more to the vaccine shedding than you would, if you were just a normal, healthy person too. It's just like if you were on Remicade or, any kind of infusion like that, you're shedding. They always tell you not to be around anybody that has a live vaccine. So it would have to be correlated.
Right. Look, your answer is always going to be try to be at top health as often as you can, right? Eat right, work out, sleep as much as you can. I had to get up super early to do all these shows today, so I went to bed really early last night because I know when I'm run down and I told Kelly last night, I said I'm exhausted. Like I do 8 shows a week plus all the interviews plus I'm writing another book. I got my offices to run. I'm exhausted. And I know that there's a peak for me. And if I were to catch something, I'm going to go down from it if I'm not, at tip top shape. So I try to kind of stay up on my health and my mental health as much as I can, because I told you, I think the last time I was here, I caught a cold driving back from Florida and I was super sick. And when I say a cold, I mean an actual cold. It was human rhinovirus. We tested it when I got back. I thought it had to be like parainfluenza 1 or Klebsiella pneumonia because I was sick. And I was just run down. I had driven my car back from Florida. I didn't sleep. I was super run down after a long week down there playing baseball. And when I caught this cold, which I normally wouldn't have exhibited symptoms from, it beat the crap out of my system. And if you are susceptible, if you're immunosuppressed or elderly, and you're in a position, I always say it, like dumb it down like this. If you can die in the next 5 years because you're that frail, a cold can bring you down, a flu can bring you down, COVID can bring you down. So you want to try and stay as greatest shape as you can. Most things you will catch during the course of the year, you're not even going to know you have. You're just not. Most people are walking around with a staph infection 1 or 2 times a year, and they have no idea they have staph aureus because it doesn't exhibit symptoms. But if you're run down, it could replicate to the point where it just starts to destroy the mitochondria of your cells. And that's kind of the answer. Again, when you go back to the basics of that and you understand it, you can understand getting sick or an autoimmune disease and how it can kind of run you down even further if you're not keeping up with your health. I hate to say that because it always sounds like a basic answer, but we learned that there's a lot to do with just keeping up and making sure that you are not immunosuppressed, like you mentioned, Trix.
Yeah.
That rhinovirus, that's not to be mistaken with the congressional rhinovirus, correct?
No. And it's funny.
Good one, Sean. Good one.
You know what, Sean? It's funny you say that. I have a meeting with somebody who was a Chris Christie appointee. And I just was in my head. I play out these scenarios. This is what I do. I was in the shower and I was just wondering if he were going to ask me what I thought about Chris Christie. My first instinct would be rhino. But then again, I kind of thought about that for a second. Wait a minute. We say Republican in name. I think we got to change it to Chino, a conservative in name only, because
there you go.
A lot of these Republicans aren't really conservatives, and we know who they are. But we always tend to kind of group them up as rhinos. But I want to change that term to Chino. Yeah,
Bongino, you say all the time. I think it was something like most Republicans on the Hill are Democrats, but there ain't no Democrats that are Republicans on the Hill.
No, but every Democrat you talk to is a Republican and just doesn't know it yet because they don't understand the issues. If they were smart enough to understand the issues, they would realize nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what? I think I want to pay more in taxes out of my income this week. Nobody says that.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you, George?
Let me help. Yeah, let me help you out. Yeah, look, most of the diseases came back because of all illegals that came in here. They weren't tested. My father came here, we had to go to Ellis Island and get all tested up. Yeah. So I mean, this is the problem. They're saying, oh, you don't want to get the vax because for the measles because you're worried about the kid and the measles. Who brought the stuff here? Who actually brought the stuff here?
Well, the biggest thing with COVID, George, though, when you look at the numbers, the data doesn't lie. Most people will tell you that if you get the shot, it will decrease hospitalization or death. And that is a blatant lie because the numbers are exactly the same pre-shot existence and post-shot existence. They did not change one bit. The difference was natural immunity, B and T lymphocytes, from getting it on your own. That was the major difference, natural immunity, which then gives you more resistance the next time you get it. And I think I've explained that on this show. But when you get a shot or a vaccine, you're expecting it to give you immunity or something, inoculation. And that were true with certain things like polio. That were true with certain things like from live attenuated shots. But we've learned that the mRNA technology, the way these shots were designed, it was never intended to do that. We lied to the public right from the beginning.
That's actually a live vaccine, right? Isn't it?
Well, a live attenuated is where they take the vaccine, they take the actual disease and they remove a portion of it. So when you're getting it, you're getting the reaction you need to get to build your immunity to it, but you're not getting the full blown disease from it. That's what live attenuated is. They're removing a sliver of it, if you could just picture it that way. These mRNAs were they don't do that. They weren't designed to do that. And think about that, George, that was a big thing. And all three of these manufacturers, and I talk about this ad nauseum, all three big manufacturers, Moderna, J&J, and Pfizer, they never designed these to go after the whole. If you know that the capsid of the virus has 27 proteins and you were going to create an inoculation, you would go after the whole of the virus with the 27 proteins. They never designed them to do that in the first place. They designed it to mimic the spike protein. So they weren't even, that's a huge thing. That's like a huge revelation if you understand it. I talk about this in my book. So I think these people lied to Trump. Because if you're giving Trump the information, he's kind of, in his mind, he is not an expert at this. He's expecting, when he again heard the word vaccine, thinking traditional vaccination. They should have told him the truth in the beginning. They were designed like flu shots. And now you hear they used to call flu shots. Now they call them flu vaccines because now it fits the definition they have changed.
Hey, interesting question from Loves Christ in the chat. She wants to know your opinion if you think the mRNA should be banned from vaccines.
No. And that's going to sound weird, right? I think and I'll tell you what, it shouldn't be used, but people aren't smart enough to be educated on it. But when you look at the mRNA, it was designed for people with cancer in the beginning. And there's a huge my hair's falling apart. Look at that. I'm getting a haircut today. Thank God. My hair, I've been begging for my hairdresser to come over for 2 weeks, and she came over during COVID. By the way, that was the only time she was the only time she worked during COVID.
Do it between shows today. Have her put a apron on you and just snip you right in the chair and spin you around.
Yeah, do it live.
Yeah, do it live around the show.
I'll do it live like Bill O'Reilly. No, they shouldn't be banned. They should be. The public should have access to information. If YouTube, and I know it's a stretch. My answer is a stretch, but in totality, it makes sense. YouTube has banned our channel because I had Brianne Dressen on the show to talk about her vaccine injury verified by the NIH. YouTube banned our channel. I wrote a chapter in my book about this because you don't realize what information you're not privy to. And there are shows like mine and yours that rely on some of the mainstreams to gather this information. You have citizen reporters all over, but we rely on the collection of all this information to get it out to you. Well, that has been diminished over time because of what YouTube and Google and go through the list. Meta, they have done. So a lot of people don't really know the truth about this, and that's my fear. But mRNA as a whole has great implications for cancer patients. So you'd imagine if you got a cancer patient who's stage 4 and you say, hey, I want to try this experimental mRNA technology that could go after the cancer cells, it always comes down to risk versus reward. In COVID, it didn't make sense, right? Again, basic common denominator, lowest common denominator. You don't need a shot that doesn't work for something you don't need. But for cancer, if you need it and you're at that point, I will try anything at that point to get it to kill the cancer cell. So I don't think mRNA technology should be banned. But in your question, you mentioned the vaccines. We shouldn't be calling these things vaccines. The terminology should be changed and call it an mRNA shot. People should be explained the difference, have access to the information, and we have to get the government up Google's ass, up YouTube's ass, and up Zuckerbucks' ass to stop them from banning all this information. Amazon banned my book. Even though they sold it, they wouldn't let me promote it. So they didn't really ban it. They just kind of suppressed it. Google, which owns YouTube, which again banned our channel and a lot of other creators' channels, they suppress this stuff. So there's some 20-year-old kid reading some algorithm somewhere with the text in our shows saying we don't want them to talk about that because there's still a narrative at play here. You think that we have free speech in this country? That's why I wrote a chapter in The Only Way to Save America about free speech, because it's only free when based on who's giving it and who's listening to it, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what part of the problem is too? I worked in healthcare research, and that's exactly what I did, was pharmaceutical research and all the new drugs that were coming out and everything like that. And we had to sign NDAs that would go, 5 to 7 years. So there's a lot of COVID and jab information that is not going to come out. And that's part of the problem, is because of those NDAs, and they would hold you to that. And big pharma would sue big time if you ever leaked anything.
Yeah. A lot of money at play. That's what it all comes down to. I mean, look at the media, right? When Fox even had they had all their personalities showing on TV, like Brett Baer, Hannity, about taking the COVID shot. It was like a commercial, right? That was all. I mean, the money that's probably put into these big media companies just from pharmaceutical, which without even being actual commercials, has got to be huge.
Yeah,
we don't say stuff.
It's crazy.
We don't run stories.
15 new billionaires were made because of the Pfizer stuff. Not millionaires, with a B. Billionaires.
I love how we got to say that. B.
That's right. B.
Billion with a B.
Like balls.
Billionaires.
Like the same thing like balls. B.
Big balls. Yeah.
Ballsy billionaires.
I get people. It's funny. I was looking at I don't use X a lot. I started to now, because now people are starting to follow me there. But I never used it when it was, Twitter, because they didn't let me speak. And some idiot heard me on Stegall this morning and has something to say. It's constant. You're literally trying to tell people what you found, what your data, trying to help people. And there are so many haters out there in the world that don't have a clue. It's funny how many people I argue with, and they want to argue with me about COVID. And I go, how many patients did you have? How much data did you analyze? We had 19,000 patients. We did 44,000 tests in multiple states. And people want to argue with you about your data when they don't even have one piece of data. It's incredible. So there is pushback from everybody, folks, and we just got to keep fighting the good fight, because if we don't, they're going to keep going. So I want to make sure that we keep speaking out. It gets exhausting sometimes, and thank you guys for having me on to talk about this stuff.
What is your X handle?
Mike, let me tell you something. They had Fauci speaking down here in Sarasota, and people were paying $600 for a ticket. They're out of their mind.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you try to sell books, and Sean will buy one and not read it. So that's the.
I'm going to get. As a matter of fact, I was going to get your book. I was going to have my wife get it the other day, but she's got a sciatica issue right now, and I didn't want to ask her again to order on Amazon.
Yeah, what a pussy.
So,
George, come on, sciatica's it's very painful.
I'll get it though. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna read, because I'm excited to read the chapter about George. Matter of fact, just for you, George, I'm gonna read your chapter 3 times, and I may even call you and I may even call you personally while I'm reading it, and read it to you, George.
Yeah, well, I'm very honored that Mike put me in that book. I was very impressed. Brought tears to my eyes.
I think Mike, I think you're missing the whole boat with this book thing. Okay, I think you should do an audio version and have George read his audio chapter.
Well, that would be good.
That would be gold.
Because Mike knows I can't spell for shit, so it doesn't matter.
I'm still waiting for him to pronounce myocarditis the correct way.
I have to come to class, Mike. I got to come to class up in Jersey.
George is good at math, though. That's the one thing. George, he can add up the numbers pretty quick on this administration and put it and give it to you straight.
George said himself he sucks at spelling, but he's good at math and kicking ass.
Yeah, that's right. Where's Papa Bear, by the way? I haven't seen Papa Bear.
He didn't come with me late. He was with us at the honor flight. We 78 veterans came back on the honor flight. We were welcoming him home. Was it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday night.
It's awesome what you guys do, George, and that's why I didn't do it to placate George. I wrote about Born to Ride for 45 in chapter 1 of the new book, but I wrote about George and Born to Ride because it's a great example for what people do when they feel like they're being suffocated by the government and they want to come out and do something and they don't know where to start, and they band together. And that's kind of why I wrote about George in the book, and just what, Born to Ride 45 does, and how you get beat up too, because people look at you and say, oh, motorcycle club, and oh, President Trump. No, you got behind a man and a movement because you wanted to fix the country from all the nonsense that you see, because you do pay attention. Most people don't pay attention, like this woman or guy, I don't know who it is, who just responded on my Twitter. But you deal with this all day. You deal with hate all day. It's crazy. And I know you guys deal with it too. You getting knives thrown at your bike, whatever it is, George. You deal with haters all day long.
Run off the road.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I rode George's bike last week, 2 weeks ago now, I guess, right? Almost. I had a ride like this. I was making sure there's no knives coming at me.
Well, it's about, it's Sean. I always tell my audience, the Democratic Party is the opposite of what they say. So, they tell you they're a party of tolerance. Well, they're intolerant. They tell you a party of, whatever it is. They're the exact opposite of what they say. So all you really got to do is listen to what they say, picture the opposite, and that's who they are. It's kind of crazy, but, we're fighting. We're sitting here fighting for term limits, lower taxes, fair elections, and they think Republicans they want to really call us Hitler. I mean, come on. And same thing with my book. They'll look at the cover and say, oh, it's a MAGA hit piece. It's nothing to do with it. My first 2 books don't have a political narrative in them. They are all about just the data, what we saw. And while hosts of shows don't want to have you on because they don't want to talk about it, there's no ratings about COVID. When I look at the chat and I hear the questions, I realize there's still people that are hungry to talk about what they still don't know about COVID. So I wish some of the mainstreams would start having a conversation. We're 5 years into this now. 5 years. That blew my mind. 5 years ago at this time in April, I was 1 month and 1 day into testing, and I was literally, I was running out of tests daily. I was talking people off ledges. I was trying to, the fear factor right now, where people say, oh, we knew. You didn't know. I was talking to everybody on every side of the aisle, and nobody knew. Nobody had a clue at this time 5 years ago. And we knew pretty quickly. We knew it about this time that this wasn't as deadly as they were saying on TV, that death count was ridiculous, and that we needed to move on from this. And guys, I got to move on because my show starts in 1 minute. I'm going to be late.
Mike, how do we find you on X?
Thank you. Go.
Wait, how do we find you on X?
X is at MJ Schwartz 1 right there on my little thingy there. And the show, the channel is 2, the number 2, Mike's Live on Rumble. 2 Mike's Live. Follow us there. You can see my show, the Mike Schwartz Show.
Yeah, 10 o'clock in the morning. He's really pissed.
I'm coming out right after you. Well, what time are you getting off?
Come on. Take it easy.
We're having to tune in there.
All right. Well, tune in when you tune out here. Tune in there. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
All right.
Very informative.
Yes. We got to sneak the trivia question in here real quick before we finish, because otherwise we'll get flack for that unless you guys want to skip it till tomorrow.
No. Go ahead. Go.
Okay. So Thursday's trivia. Anybody? This is the question. Which act of 1882 was the first significant law restricting immigration to the United States based on nationality? And I'll read it again. Which act of 1882 was the first significant law restricting immigration to the United States based on nationality? Is anybody guessing?
Let's see here. Where's my chat?
Okay. No, I haven't seen anything come up yet.
My chat. Florida for Trump says promise no cheating. Let's see. I don't know, this might be a hard one, but let's see.
It is a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I see Mark.
Yep, we got Mark. An Alienation Act of 1882.
Oh, Jilly. What about Jilly? Jilly won.
Immigration Act of 1882. She's laughing at,
Well, Mark's done a lot, too. If he's right, he can't win.
Yeah, energy. Weather was great when we were there. It was fantastic. I see energy put about Florida. Denise, Immigration Act of 1882. Loves Christ. Enemies Alien Act.
What time is it? Okay.
This may be the,
one more minute, and the thing gets closed.
I think I made this one too hard.
Get here late. Why 1776 get here late? What's wrong with you?
She lives on the West Coast. That's why.
All the late people hit the like button. We need
Yeah.
some likes.
Yeah, the likes brings us up to be recognized a lot, so it's very good. We want more people to watch our show. We're going to get a lot of good information.
Should we cut it off?
Yep.
Okay, we're cutting it off. That's it. We'll announce who won tomorrow. And yes, I thought Mike was freaking excellent today. I wish we would have had 2 hours because there was so much we could have gone over.
He'll come back on again. You know,
I want him to talk about big pharma though. You know, the next time that would be you get into that with all the advertising.
I know Mike from before, but Papa Bear went to his introduction about the book, the first one, and he was saying stuff. I mean, there was a small group of people, maybe 10, but you should have saw everybody's eyes light up. I mean, I couldn't believe the stuff that he was saying.
Oh, I could talk to that guy for hours.
And everybody just, not that we're pushing his book, but you should buy his book because that's the problem with a lot of people who don't have the knowledge. Yeah. If you read his books, you read his books, you'll understand exactly how the government tried to give us a jar of Vaseline and give it to everybody. So his books he's being sued by the government of the Biden administration, the leftovers that are there. And not for a couple of $1,000, for a lot of money. And they keep on challenging him about what's going on.
They want to silence him is what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. The problem,
again, free speech.
The problem is there's so much money into between the fake news media and the Democrats and everything else. And I tell everybody, and we'll go back and forth again, about everybody's complaining about Bondi, Cash Patel, and who they're hiring back and forth. I heard it last night. I was at a meeting last night, and they have to do something. They have to do something to save the American MAGA movement because a lot of MAGA people do not realize. And to tell, last night I brought up a thing. I says, how many people knew when President Trump got shot at the exact time? And I told him, I said, go with your phone, Google Ephesians 6:11. And in Ephesians 6:11, it was exactly 6:11:33. And on 6:11, Ephesians 6:11, it says, put the armor of God upon you to protect yourself from evil. Right? And that's why he's chosen to save this country. You know, God had a sense of humor for the past 4 years, put it that way. I mean, he was really funny about the whole thing, the 4 years, but the 4 years was preparing Trump for what he was going to do. And Trump made this statement. He said, if he didn't get the amount of votes that he got in 2020, he would have never ran 2024. Mm-hmm. It's a known fact.
Oh,
he realized how much. He realized how much the people wanted him, 100%. And the lies and everything else. Yes, the thing was stolen, but that's got to be. They're going to find out about all that bullshit, but nothing can be done.
Yeah, it was a gift that was stolen.
And then they're going to find out about the auto pen, about the 8,000 pardons that Biden did. 8,000 he did. And Fauci got pardoned from 2014. So that's how far back he wanted to get pardoned. And then
this guy gets it. That's what I want to see. Him and Fauci. I want to see him and Fauci together.
Oh, yeah.
Until next, he's got to be number one. And let me tell you something. General Flynn is perking that they didn't do anything yet. And I know who his number one enemy is, boy. Let me tell you. Mm-hmm. He's steaming. And that's what me personally, that's what should have been. Well, he was the original pick for vice president in 2016. And the deep state got into that shit. So that's another story I can get into. But there's so much.
We haven't heard him as being involved in.
I'm going to get General Flynn as a guest speaker because I'm friends with him very well. Tom Homan, I text him and I want to send him a case of apples, and he didn't respond to me. So, but I like to wear ice shirts, and you heard that they're going to cancel Cinco de Mayo, right? In the sanctuary cities because
Oh, because no one's going to go.
Missing everybody.
Hey, what's this rumor I'm hearing? Is Mark wearing bunny ears for our Good Friday, Frisky Friday tomorrow for pre-Easter show? Bunny ears.
That would be funny if he did.
Mark, put the bunny ears on.
Yeah, we probably ought to close out here. It's 6 after, so we went over, but it was worth it.
God bless. I hope everybody got informed about what the stuff was going on. Everybody's like saying goodbye.
Hit that like button on the way out.
Yeah, please. Very important.
Okay, we'll see you guys tomorrow for Frisky Friday.
If you don't hit the like, I'll come and look for you.
Bye.
See you. Bye later.
Take care, Sean. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.